Welcome everyone to another episode of Follow the Light Music Review. My name is John DeLaurentis, and this is the second episode of Album Review Series. And today I'm going to be looking at an artist that was someone that I've been listening to since I grew up, one of my favorite bands of all time, and was very influential in just my musical appreciation and enjoyment. And then he later on went on to become a Christian, although he was a Christian earlier on, and I'll go over that a little bit later, but came out with some Christian albums. And I'm going to be talking about Mark Farner, okay, because he just recently released a new album at the end of 2024 called Closer to My Home, and I figured this would be a great time to give a album review on what's coming out recently from Mark Farner. So before I get into that, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video, make sure you comment below and give me your feedback if you're familiar with this album or maybe the music of Mark Farner or Grand Funk Railroad. You can give some comments below, and then also you can ring the bell for notifications so you can keep up to date on these different video series that I'm doing. All right, so let's get right into it. So Mark Farner, and his latest album is called Closer to My Home, came out in 2024. Like I said, a few months ago, I think toward the end of 2024, it came out. And this is a brand new solo album. Of course, he's had a number of different solo albums that have come out. We'll talk about the ones that he released in the Christian market shortly. But Mark Farner, of course, an iconic rock legend with Grand Funk Railroad in the 1970s, and released a bunch of gold albums, very popular albums, songs that you can still hear on classic rock radio today, including I'm Your Captain, Closer to Home, which is on this new solo album in a 55th year anniversary re-record. So we're going to talk about the album in specific. So Mark Farner, of course, beyond his iconic status in the 1970s with Grand Funk Railroad, went on in the 1980s to come to accept Christ as his Savior in a more explicit way, although his salvation relates back to when he was younger, which I'm going to go over that in a little while. But he then went on to make some Christian albums that came out, and then he left the Christian music world, and he went on basically kind of the Mark Farner Band, and he was doing some tours, and he's still doing some tours as Mark Farner's American Band, where he does a mix of Grand Funk Railroad songs and Mark Farner solo songs. So a lot of people would say, well, did he leave his Christianity? Is he no longer a Christian? And the answer is yes, he did leave the structure of the Christian record labels and is releasing albums that are not considered gospel albums or Christian albums. But he did not leave his Christianity. He's still very much a believer in Christ. And we're going to talk about that. He's got some notes about that on here. But I thought it would be worthwhile to go over in an album review his latest release and see where he's at. And we can talk about that in more depth as we go through this. So I wanted to go over the album cover here. And of course you can see the barn with the American flag on it, Closer to My Home, of course, named after the song I'm Your Captain, Closer to My Home on here, which again, like I said, is on here. So here's the back cover, has the songs, some credits there. And then when we open it up, we have the label and a nice picture of Farner, who is now 76 years old and still rocking, still sounds great, voice sounds just as good as he did in his heyday with Grand Funk Railroad. And you open it up. Now the booklet doesn't have much. This is released by him on Righteous Records, and he just puts like a little bit of a note inside here, and he's got some of the musician credits on here. And to answer the question, is he still a believer? He kind of answers that right here in his notes. He says, first and foremost, I would like to thank God, my Creator, for my life and purpose here on earth and my eternal home in heaven. I don't know what the purpose of all the trials and tribulations is, but I do know they will not distract me from serving my God. God is love, and love is my master. And so he makes a declaration here. He still has his faith, still a believer. And even though these albums wouldn't be classified as technically Christian albums, there are music being put out by a Christian. And we'll talk about the songs in specifically here. But he does have that, and he has, I think at the end here, where he says, God bless you all, and he has the praying hands, and he has the cross here. So still very much a believer. And we're going to talk about the songs in this album, and then we can get into a little bit more about Mark Farner in this album review. But I want to give a review of this album, and again, we'll talk more about his Christian releases briefly as well. So this album opens up with a track called Anymore, a classic rocker, great harmonies, good guitar solo, really strong song, one of the best tracks on the album, a great opening track. And this song kind of is like a him talking about the things, the struggles he's gone through, but he's not going to listen to it anymore. Listen to that, maybe the bad things, or listening to things that may have caused him pain. So he says, when I was young, I listened to the words of men, but that was then, and I won't listen to them anymore. They told me things I should believe, but all it did was make me grieve. So I won't listen to them anymore. So he talks about that. And then he goes on in the kind of the chorus here saying, love, keep on shining on me. Love, keep on looking far as you can see. So then it's interesting here. He mentions Grand Funk. Now, of course, if you know anything about the Grand Funk, current Grand Funk that's touring is with Don Brewer, the drummer, and Mel Shocker, the bass player, two original members from Grand Funk Railroad. But there was a breaking apart between Mark Farner and his former bandmates. And they're touring under this Grand Funk name because I believe Don Brewer got the rights to the name. And they're doing Grand Funk Railroad songs, but it's not really, if you're going to see Grand Funk Railroad, it's not like the classic Grand Funk Railroad with Mark Farner. And Mark Farner was primarily the songwriter of most of the songs that Grand Funk did. Co-wrote with Don Brewer, of course, as well, and Craig Frost, the keyboardist, later on. But he mentions here, in the beginning, it was me and my band. It's sad to say that we don't play together anymore. It's not the quantity, it's the honesty, my friend. The story ends and I'm not angry with him anymore. All right, so it's kind of like this song of kind of letting go, forgiving and forgetting, and saying, I've let that piece go. And it's a really, really strong opening track here. This is followed up by a song called The Prisoner. This is kind of like a funky rocker, has a really good strong bass line, has some horns in it, and some gospel-styled vocals in it too. So it's a really good, strong song. And basically, he opens up saying, I'm just a prisoner in this fleshy shell. In other words, a prisoner in my body. And he's saying, although I'm a prisoner, I overcome this world. I got courage knowing you are my only word now. Victory come to me. Heartbreak is my emptiness. I keep praying. I keep looking. Can you help me, please? All right. So just a song about the struggles of the flesh and living in the world here. Really good song. Then he goes into a song called Same Game. Now, this is where he gets into kind of more issue-oriented songs that are, there's a few of them on here. This one here called Same Game. It's another really good rocker, good keyboard background into it. And this is basically about people who lie to you. And it's just kind of like a political type song where he's saying, lie, lie, lie to the people. The same thing happens every day. Mainstream voices are evil. I don't know why they try, because all they do is lie to us. And then he talks about They say he won the election. He talks about it's the same game. It's the same game every day. Same game. And, basically got to pick it all up and throw it back in their face, lie to the people. So it's kind of a song about all the voices that may be coming to us from the media, from politicians, and yet a lot of it is based on lies. They're lying to the people. And Mark Farner's always been for the people. He's always been a common man type, singing for the common man and singing for the people. So it kind of goes in with that one. The next song kind of talks about people. It's called Facade, and he's talking about people being one thing and trying to do certain roles and stuff like that, but it's just a facade. It's fakery. And he has one line in here, facade. This is like the chorus here. He says, facade, it's all a big facade. It's people playing God, and it's all a big facade. So he says, no need to fake what I do, pantomiming lies. Staying true to my heart brings out the love inside. People come and people go. Ask me why, but I don't know. People live and people die, and all the children wonder why. And then he goes on to say the chorus again, and some people are playing God. They're trying to act as if they are God. So that's another kind of message song that's on here. This is followed up by Oh Darling, and this is a love song, obviously, to his wife. This is a song that if it was released as a single, I think it could be a good hit single. It's a very passionate vocal from Mark Farner here. And Mark is a testimony in his own marriage. He's been married to his wife, Lucia, for over 40 years, and he raised 5 sons with her. So it's a really nice, sweet love song about the relationship he has with his wife. Then we get back to Real after that song, and this one kind of fools you. It starts with this really soft opening, and then it charges into this great rock and roll riff. It's definitely another one of the standout tracks on this album. Great musicianship, Mark singing with passion, and again, he's talking about being real and speaking for the common man against all of the voices that are out there. And he says, when you talk about the new world order, I get so doggone mad because it means giving up everything we ever had. We used to have freedom, Lord, and liberty. Now we just have taxes in the state of poverty. So again, another song about a warning about political nature and voices and things, people telling you what to do and not being honest with you. So really great song. Again, Mark Farner singing his heart out. His voice sounds just as great, 76 years old, and he can still sing great, which is amazing. And the song is about he's real. In other words, he's not going to put a facade before you like he talked about in the other song. He's real. He's a real person. He's down to earth. And that's what that song's about. And again, he's got another song after that kind of is talking about, again, control. And this one's called Surveilling Us. This is an upbeat pop rocker. It features a nice slide guitar solo on there. And Mark Slaughter, who is on this album, he plays all the instruments on that particular song. And again, that's another one about who are you? Tell me, who am I today? You can't listen to the evil things they say, surveilling us. Okay, so again, another message song here where he's talking about we need to cut off the head of this evil thing surveilling us. So this kind of like infiltration into our lives, surveilling us and seeing what we're doing. And he says, you're really ugly and you're out of style. Take a break and just set back a while. Oh, people, brothers and sisters, who is it in your face trying to eliminate the human race, surveilling us? All right, so again, another message song here that's on this album here. Then the album kind of ends with 3 songs, one of them being the remake, ends the album, Your Captain. So we'll talk about that one in a minute. But he has these 2 really kind of ballady songs. The first one being Tiny Fingers. And this is a heartfelt ballad about raising a son. Now, this song most likely is about Mark's son, Jesse. And he raised 5 sons, but Jesse died, unfortunately, at the age of 29 in 2018. He was involved in a very tragic accident in 2010 when he was doing backflips off of a table, and he ended up breaking his neck. It left him as a quadriplegic, and he was wheelchair bound. And when he was in that wheelchair, he became kind of really interested with remote control cars. He became an enthusiast of that, and he was able to control the remote control cars and his wheelchair by blowing air through a straw. But unfortunately, through all of the years, the 8 years that he battled with that health thing, he did end up passing away. And so this is a really heartfelt ballad about his son here, and he talks about tears of joy, when the birth of a baby, which the song is talking about, become tears of sadness. No one said it to me. Tiny boys grow up with madness for their eyes to see. And he's talking, it's kind of like a grieving song about you raise this son and then you lose them. Parents, it's a very difficult thing for a parent to ever outlive their children, and to have to bury a child here. So it's a very heartfelt song. Like I said, a very ballad, emotional kind of song there. Then the song after that is another kind of mid-tempo ballad, I would call it. It's called Friends Forever. And it's about the life of musicians and their fans. And how we're musicians and we're playing like minstrels to an audience, and we're friends forever through the music, through that connection of music. We have that connection to each other. This one has some nice keyboard textures on it, some nice strum guitars. This is actually a song that's a cover song by a band by Jim Peterick and World Stage, which first appeared on his Roots and Shoots Volume 1 album with Mark Farner singing with him. On this version here, this is, of course, Mark Farner singing all the vocals himself on here. But again, a really nice mid-tempo ballad. And then the album closes with the iconic, epic Grand Funk Railroad song, I'm Your Captain, Closer to Home, which Mark Farner released in 1970 on the Grand Funk Railroad album. I have that right over here. This was on this album, Closer to Home. And that was the song that became a signature song for Grand Funk Railroad. It's got an epic build-up as it builds up to this orchestrated ending where he repeats the refrain, I'm getting closer to my home, I'm getting closer to my home. And it's a song still played regularly on classic rock radio stations. And I want to talk specifically about that song. That ends the album. And in terms of how good is that version is, it sounds almost identical to the original version. Very much the same. Mark still got his voice, still has that wah-wah guitar in there as it builds up. So it's a faithful rendering of the original song. No changes, no new twists to it. Just a faithful rendition of a classic song. And I want to talk about that song because that is where Mark Farner talks about his salvation experience here. So back in a while ago, this is, let me see what year this was, if I could see it here in the cover, if it's here. This is September, October. This is HM Magazine, and this was from, I'm trying to see if there's a date in here. I should have looked it up before. I'm not exactly sure, but obviously it goes back a little while, because this was at the time that Grand Funk was reunited with the original band members, and they had put out a live album called Bosnia, and I was very fortunate enough to see Grand Funk Railroad live on that tour at one of the casinos in Atlantic City, and I actually got to meet Mark Farner, Don Brewer, and Mel Shocker, and that was shortly after I had interviewed him for HM Magazine for this issue here. So this is the article I wrote on Mark Farner called On the Road Again. And I wanted to talk about that song, how it came to be written, and what it has to do with Mark Farner's salvation experience here. So he talks about this song and how the lyrics came out, and how he was going through a very difficult time because his father had passed away, and he was inspired. And it said, this was, he recalls this before I made a commitment to Christ. So, but he says, here is the story behind how this all came about. He said that he was 9 years old and his father had died. His father was a World War II vet, and I'm quoting from the article. This is from when I interviewed him. And he was a city fireman in Flint, Michigan, and he died in a car train wreck. So he said that Billy Graham was on the television doing a crusade, and he was in the living room watching, because he had just come into the dining room and his mother was sitting with a bunch of people and they were all crying, and he wanted to get that grief and out of his ears here. And he said what Billy Graham had to say on that television show that he was watching touched my 9-year-old heart enough for me to get down on my knees in front of the television set and commit then to God. But he said he was not raised in a church home. It wasn't a Christian type of environment. But he said, I'll tell you what, because God is so faithful, he pastored me from that time in my spirit. He never leaves us or forsakes us. And so he went on to have this career, but he always had that experience in his life. And then he kind of prayed to God, give me a song that will touch the hearts of people that you want to touch. And that was that song that he felt God gave to him, I'm Your Captain, Closer to My Home. And then it went on to become, like I said, an iconic song, the signature song of Grand Funk Railroad. And so that was all about that song that was of significance here. Like I said, in this issue of HM Magazine. I'll have to put on the screen when I edit the video what the year is. I'll look it up. But there was, in Grand Funk's lyrics, a lot of times there was kind of a spiritual focus. There was an album they came out with, Phoenix. And on this particular album, there was a song called So You Won't Have to Die. And it's a song that talks about Jesus being the solution, and it's best that we let him save our souls so we can get much stronger is one of the lyrics here. So there is that spiritual focus there. There's also a very heart-wrenching song on their album Born to Die, where the opening track talks about his cousin that died yesterday, and he talks about, I never had a chance to know, for him to express his views to me, in other words, about eternity and about God. And he says, I swear that he's leaving to the rest of you, and he says, we live this life and exactly the way that we want to, but there's always that one thing we never can count on. You were born for it to happen to you, and it's called Born to Die. And that is my favorite Grand Funk Railroad album. There may be other ones more iconic, like We're an American Band, Shining On, and I love those albums as well. But that album, Born to Die, my favorite, one of my favorite albums. I still have the vinyl record of that one from my childhood growing up in the 1970s. So let's talk briefly about the albums quickly, because I don't want to make this video go on too long. It's already at the 23 mark. But he did release 3 albums, Christian albums. This first one was called Just Another Injustice. The second one was called Wake Up. And the third one, as you can see in my shirt, was Some Kind of Wonderful. And this was his remake of a Grand Funk song that was recorded by Grand Funk, Some Kind of Wonderful, where he alters the words to be that Jesus is his Some Kind of Wonderful on here. And these are great albums. These were released on Frontline Records. And he went on from that, like I said, and I think there was a compilation of songs that came out after that, after those 3 things. He went on and he went back into kind of feeling like I guess he felt like his ministry was to go back into the audiences that he had performed to before. And so he did a number of albums after this, but he left the Christian music market in terms of being distributed by them. And a lot of people say that those Christian albums, as good as they are, they don't really capture the Mark Farner Grand Funk Railroad sound in songwriting. They're more kind of pop rock affairs and nothing that, they're great albums. I love them, but it is true they're not kind of the songwriting style that we would think of from Mark Farner back then. So again, if you were wondering about this album, Mark Farner, when you get it, if you decide to get it, it is worth getting. But I wouldn't say it's classified as a gospel album or a Christian album, but it's an album of music made by a Christian, and it has a lot of issue type songs on here, like I talked about in my album review. So if you like the music of Mark Farner and Grand Funk Railroad, I think you're going to really enjoy this. I think he did a great job. There's great musicianship on here, and I think it's a worthwhile addition to your collection if you're a Mark Farner or Grand Funk Railroad fan. So I was excited when he announced it coming out, and I'm excited now to be listening to it now and enjoying it. So that's my album review for Mark Farner's Closer to My Home. And again, I hope you can leave some comments about your experiences with Mark Farner, his music, whether with his solo work, his Christian albums that he made, or with Grand Funk Railroad. Let me know in the comments what you think, and I would really appreciate it again if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video, and ring the bell for notifications. So as always, follow the light that shines out in the darkness. God bless everyone.